The law says you can possess up to 5 ounces. The commission has created a limit of 5 grams per 90 days. What we saw in the legislature this last year was 70% of voters voted a certain way, but 60% of the legislature was representing a different position. So the elected officials are not reflecting the will of the voters on this issue and so many others.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I am your host, Dan Parsons. Coming up on today's show, the return of Nebraska State Senator John Cavanaugh. As you may recall, the senator was on the show back in June to announce his run for Congress. And today, we'll get an update on the senator's efforts to uphold the voter-approved legislation to enact the medical cannabis industry in Nebraska. Plus, we'll catch up on John's run to replace Congressman Don Bacon in CD2. But first, how would you like a free Go Fact Yourself t-shirt? During the month of October, we are giving away our signature t-shirt for everyone who joins Friends of Dan, our Patreon support team. Just go to patreon.com, look up the Dan Parsons Show, and join Friends of Dan. We'll send you a free t-shirt for your support. We appreciate it very much. Okay, here's my interview with the Nebraska State Senator and candidate for Congress, John Cavanaugh. Enjoy. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the show Nebraska State Senator John Cavanaugh. Senator, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Senator Cavanaugh represents Midtown Omaha's District 9 and is the vice chair of the General Affairs Committee. This is your first time back since June when we had you on the show when you announced your congressional campaign to replace 2nd District Congressman Don Bacon, who's announced he's not running for re-election next year. So I'd like to ask you a couple questions about Washington. But before we get to that, let's talk about your effort to uphold the overwhelming vote by Nebraskans last year to legalize medical cannabis. Late last week, you formally challenged the regulations from the Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission that you say override the clearly expressed will of Nebraska voters. You wrote a letter to State Senator Ben Hansen of Blair, the chair of the legislature's exec board, and you said in that letter, all without the benefit of a public hearing or public scrutiny, the commission and the governor have chosen to override the clearly expressed will of Nebraska voters. So I promise I'll shut up, Senator, and let you talk, but can you help our audience understand the status of medical cannabis that voters overwhelmingly approved last year?
Sure, and thanks for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to see you. So to kind of set the table for you, there was the ballot initiative that was passed by the voters last November, had 2 parts. One of them legalized the possession of cannabis for medical purposes up to 5 ounces with the doctor's recommendation in writing. So that's pretty much what it laid out in there. And then there was a separate part that created the Medical Cannabis Commission that was responsible to make it accessible to folks. So to license growers, to regulate that, and then to license the sale of cannabis. But the power granted to that commission was not the power to change the law, and they were not given the power to change what types of delivery mechanisms. So the ballot initiative legalized the possession of all types of cannabis, whether it be flower, edibles, tinctures, or whatever other mechanisms that people use this for medical purposes. The commission has overstepped the authority that was granted to it in that second law by restricting what types of doctors, where those doctors are, what way in which the doctors can make their recommendation. And then they've also further restricted the amount that someone can get from the law says you can possess up to 5 ounces. the commission has created a limit of 5 grams per 90 days, which is a lot less.
Yeah, quite a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a big difference. And then they've also limited the delivery mechanisms, specifically limiting people from buying or the dispensaries from selling flower or the plant, which anybody who knows anything about medical cannabis knows that a lot of people are interested in it because it is a holistic type of medicine. It comes from the earth. It's a plant. You hear people say things like that a lot. And so that was explicitly legalized in the law by the voters. And the commission is creating a regulation system that prevents people from gaining access to that.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt, Senator, but by the way, just to remind our viewers that every member of that commission now has been appointed by Governor Pillen, correct?
All of the current members have
Yes.
been, and then when he replaces the 2 members of the Liquor Control Commission, he again will be appointed by Pillen, yes. But the thing I want to make completely clear is that the commission does not have the ability to change the law. So a person who has a doctor's recommendation in writing can still legally possess up to 5 ounces of cannabis for medical purposes. What the commission is doing is making it harder for people to access that in Nebraska. So someone could still go to a neighboring state that sells cannabis. They can get a doctor's note from a doctor either in Nebraska or in another state, and they could buy up to 5 ounces of cannabis plant or the equivalent in terms of gummies or edibles or things like that, and they would be in compliance with the state law. And so the commission is just making it harder for families of kids with epilepsy to access this medicine. They're making it harder for folks who have mobility issues to gain access to this medicine that everybody voted for. And they're undermining the expressed will of the voters.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was really important to me to speak up and use the levers at my disposal to ensure that we are holding them accountable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And the rest of that law that was passed by voters overwhelmingly gave the commission until July 1 to issue regulations and October 1 to begin issuing licenses, a deadline that will be missed by at least a week following the commissioner's resignations, as you noted. And Senator Hansen said that he would refer your complaint to Senator Rick Holdcraft, who chairs the General Affairs Committee. And so, and I think Holdcraft said that the committee who would consider requesting the Medical Cannabis Commission to engage, the commission would have 60 days to respond if requested. So what's the status of your request?
Well, you correctly say that. So I submitted to Senator Hansen in his capacity as the chair of the exec board, which is what the statute requires. And then he should refer it to the committee of jurisdiction, which should be the General Affairs Committee. I asked that the General Affairs Committee have a hearing on this matter in conjunction with the hearing we already have set for October 31st. So there's an interim study hearing set for October 31st that was submitted by myself, Senator Hansen, Senator Holcroft, and at the time we submitted it at the end of the legislative session in May or June. And that was just to get the lay of the land of where we're at in terms of the regulations and the system wide. But in light of the fact that all of those relevant folks should be there for that hearing, I'm asking that we take up this conversation at that point in time and be able to get to some of the questions that are raised by what I consider subverting the will of the people.
So here we are. We're recording this on Monday morning. Any word back from the chair?
No direct communication to me. I obviously read the press coverage as well, where Senator Holcroft said that we were having that hearing, and I'll have my opportunity to bring it up in that hearing.
Okay. In the meantime, there is commissioners hope to make the regulations final and have scheduled a 1:00 public hearing at the State Office Building on October 15th, which is obviously prior to your hearing of the General Affairs Committee. And I know our friends with the Medical Cannabis people who were supporting that effort and have placed a lot of time and sweat and blood and tears into that effort. They're encouraging people to show up for that October 15th hearing. What's your message to voters who, I think a lot of us are just frustrated that the legislature would just ignore, and the governor and the attorney general, just ignore the will of the overwhelming, whether it's 51% or in this case over 70%. So what's your message to voters and how they can continue to be engaged in this effort?
Well, I share voters' frustration, and obviously I'm taking every action that I can as a state senator and a representative of the people to stand up both in the legislative session when I was trying to get a bill passed that would have prevented the commission from doing exactly what we were afraid they were going to do. When I stood up against the folks that were appointed to the commission, because this was exactly what we thought they would do if the people who had continually opposed medical cannabis were appointed to regulate it. And so I continue to exercise every avenue that I have at my disposal to stand up for people. But the voters need to make their voices heard, and they need to hold their elected officials accountable. Because what we saw in the legislature this last year was that, like you said, 70% of voters voted a certain way, but 60% of the legislature was representing a different position. And so the elected officials are not reflecting the will of the voters on this issue and so many others. And so people need to make their opinion known when they elect people, and that they need to hold them accountable to the positions that they support. And I think going to the commission, of course, and making your voice heard there and supporting my attempt to hold them accountable. But what really the end needs to be is the legislature needs to take some action to constrain the commission and to put into effect more laws that are reflective of the will of the people.
Yeah. I know it's frustrating. I mean, as you alluded to, this wasn't the only issue that voters expressed their desire at the voting booth when it comes to ballot issues, and the legislature either fiddled around with it or just ignored some of those wishes. So do you see in addition to holding those people accountable at the ballot box, because half of your colleagues, or about half, I think, are up for election this next year in 2026. And so, and I suspect, as others have talked about, there may be additional ballot issues brought to the table to help preserve or to enhance some of those positions that have not been able to pass. So anyway, your thoughts on that?
I was going to say, was that a question?
Well, somewhere in there's a question, Senator.
So I think, not to call out any elected officials or any senators by name, but there are a handful of senators who are up for re-election this year or in 2026 in districts that voted overwhelmingly for paid sick leave, for minimum wage, for expanded access to cannabis, medical cannabis. And those senators have taken the opposite position to their constituents in the legislature. And often you will see senators say, well, that the people knew what I stood for when they voted for me, and they act, contrary to their constituents' will, and do it kind of gleefully or with impunity. I did ask a few times rhetorically on the floor, and I probably should have done it more pointedly, but asked whether the people who were in favor of undermining minimum wage had campaigned on that when they went door to door, or people who were undermining paid sick leave had campaigned on that when they went door to door. I can tell you from my personal experience, I campaigned on medical cannabis and defending access to that and implementing the will of the people when it got passed when I was running for office. I campaigned on expanding paid sick leave, and I campaigned on defending minimum wage. And so my voters did know where I was because I went out and affirmatively told them where I was. But there were a number of people who were going against the will of the voters and acting as though the voters maybe didn't know quite what they were doing. And so it is, frustrating as a person who's in the legislature fighting on these things and supports the will of the voters to have it be so ignored. And I do understand and respect people wanting to bring new ballot initiatives to push back on this. But I would certainly suggest that you need to make sure you have elected officials who are going to be respectful of that, because passing another ballot initiative that is just going to get rolled back by the super majority of the legislature who doesn't agree with it and just ignores it is not helpful either. Yeah. It just makes people frustrated that government doesn't actually do what people want it to do. Yeah. And so I think it is really important that we get elected officials who actually reflect what the people want.
Yeah, 100%. Well, speaking of frustrations, let's go from the frying pan into the heat. Congress, let's talk about Congress. Due to the federal shutdown, the expected Friday's job report, unavailable. However, economists that I've read about say the continued trend of there's continued trend of job losses, especially in Midwest farm states. The Chicago Federal Reserve president told CNBC last week that the current data points to a weak labor market and ongoing inflation challenges. And then to make matters even worse, or to illustrate those challenges, according to farmers and trade groups, in 2023, China bought $982 million worth of soybeans from Nebraska producers, but will not buy a stinking single bushel from the Cornhusker State this fall. So how concerned are you with the direction of the economy, not only for those Nebraska farmers, but for all of us as a candidate for Congress?
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly concerned about the economy overall. I'm incredibly concerned about the cost of everyday items. We're seeing prices going up at the grocery store. We're seeing the healthcare costs going up. And with the failure to extend the ACA program credits by this White House and this Senate and this House, all run by the Republicans, we're going to see 31,000 people in the Omaha metro area, the 2nd Congressional District, see their healthcare costs go up, and some of them by thousands of dollars. A family of four making $129,000 a year would potentially see their health insurance premiums buying on the private market. So private citizen buying from a private company will see their costs go up by $12,000 a year. And that is not something that you can afford. You can't build that into your budget. A 10% increase in your overall budget, a 300% increase in your healthcare costs makes healthcare unaffordable. And we are going to see people have to make a tough choice whether they're going to, buy groceries or pay for healthcare. And that is a huge concern. And that is created by the inaction of President Trump and his allies in Congress.
Yes, well, and we're seeing that play out now with the government shutdown. Amid a bitter impasse on Capitol Hill over competing congressional spending bills, one backed by each party. The Senate is scheduled to reconvene today to put the bill to a vote. So you mentioned the ACA. Is that the biggest sticking point at this point for both parties to get the government back open? How do you see that? And I guess if you were representing the 2nd District, how would you help solve this impasse?
Well, it certainly does look like Republicans want to shut down the government because they want to deny access to health care for Americans, for tens of thousands of Nebraskans. And if I were in Congress, I, of course, would be fighting every day to drive down costs across the board. In my time in the legislature, I always talk about my favorite bill I passed was a repeal of the tax on diapers, because I am focused on things that actually make life more affordable for working Nebraskans. And the Republicans and President Trump are shutting down our government because they would rather send $20 billion to Argentina, which is actually, to go back to our commodity prices, is in direct competition. They are the ones selling to China. So they'd rather send $20 billion to Argentina than to lower healthcare costs for Nebraskans. And so that is just a backwards priorities. They're doubly hurting Nebraskans by propping up our competition and using the money they should be using to drive down healthcare costs.
Yeah. Some of our delegation, maybe all of them, I guess, have suggested that with the big, beautiful bill, which, again, I know a lot of that is what we're arguing over in the shutdown of the federal government. And so I know that most, if not all of those congressional members from Nebraska are suggesting that, rural health care is not going to be damaged because we're going to pump, as part of the big, beautiful bill, we're pumping in billions of dollars to rural health care to sustain them. Well, to me, it's about the same damn thing they're doing with relief of soybean and corn farmers here in the state. And it's a bailout. I don't think those rural hospitals would rather, I don't think they would, instead of the bailout, I think they would like to continue serving their customers and their clients as they have been. And same thing with Nebraska farmers. I think they would much rather get a market for those soybeans and other products rather than the government giving them a check as a handout. So anyway, I'll stop editorializing your thoughts on that, Senator.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Nebraskans are hardworking people who all they're asking for is an opportunity to do an honest day's work for an honest wage that they can live off of. And that is a totally reasonable thing to ask for, and the government should not be making it harder for you to do that. I would tell you to make sure you have an opportunity to talk to folks who maybe run some of these rural hospitals, because what I'm hearing is that money coming from the bailout money for rural hospitals is less money than they would be getting under the system before that. And it comes with strings attached that requires them to use it in a way that is not helpful to them, which means it is additional government red tape making it harder to deliver healthcare. Healthcare is hard enough to deliver already in our system, and we don't need Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress erecting red tape for citizens to get their Medicare, Medicaid, for hospitals to be able to pay their bills and provide service to their customers. We don't need more government red tape between citizens and their doctors.
I'm old enough to remember when the Republican Party, which I'm still a member of, were for less government, not more. Anyway, Congressman, geez, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. Senator, thank you for your time. Anything else we've missed here today? Maybe give us an overview of the congressional campaign. I know you're working hard, even while you're trying to continue to encourage your colleagues in the legislature to do the right thing. Give us an update of where the campaign is.
Well, things are going well. It's October, so we're just a year and a month, actually a year and a month and from today, about is Election Day. Yeah. We are building the campaign that is ready to win this election, both in May and in November of next year. I feel very good about the response that I'm getting from Nebraskans across the district. Been out knocking doors and having good conversations with folks, been out at community events and talking to people. And so feel very good about where we're at and the message that I'm delivering of making life more affordable for Nebraskans, running on my record of standing up to the overreach of extreme Republicans, standing up to Trump, and fighting for lowering costs every day in meaningful ways that actually improve people's lives. I think that's a message that resonates with people. I think that's what people are looking for. And of course, somebody who does all of this in a positive way, which is how I've always approached my job in the legislature, is principled positivity, but standing up and fighting when it's necessary and using the skills and the tools at my disposal to stand up for Nebraskans. Yeah.
Well, we like that attitude here on the Dan Parsons Show. So thanks, Senator, for that. Well, I encourage, how can our audience get in touch with you, Senator?
Oh, yeah. Well, they can find us on all the social media platforms, but they can also visit johncavanaugh.org. It's JohnCavanaugh.org. And reach out to the campaign or find us on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram.
Yeah, all those. The TikTok. We love the TikTok here on the Dan Parsons Show. So anyway, Senator, thanks for your time. Thanks for your leadership. We'll be watching these issues and continuing to update our audience. And you're welcome back here anytime, my friend.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks, Senator Cavanaugh, for your time today. We'll continue to follow the efforts to implement voter-approved medical cannabis here in Nebraska and your campaign to become Nebraska's next representative in Congress from CD2. Hey, thanks to the Parsons team who made this show possible. Chase Porter, our executive producer. Ike Samanas, producer and graphic design. Penology Tech Solutions for their technical help. And Kim Remington, Parsons PR's Director of Operations. And my sincere thanks to each of you for your support and for tuning in. Okay, that's today's show. Thanks for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.